Another world. Another time.
In the age of wonder.
You are listening to
Trial by Stone.
Trial by Stone!
Dea, Tea, Dera, Tea.
Your vital essence, the Dark Crystal.
Kida.
Come, see for yourself.
Aru, Garu.
How very interesting.
Dea, Tea. I feel the song of Thra in my heart. Now go, you heroes of Thra.
Hello and welcome to Trial by Stone. This is your vital essence for the Dark Crystal. I'm your host, Philip Mitchell, and I just want to say thank you so much for tuning in. As on this episode, we've got a couple of guests on the show, which I'll actually get you to introduce yourselves as you're from Bonus XP. They are the developers behind the upcoming video game, The Dark Crystal Age of Resistance Tactics. And I mean, I'd have to say, first of all, I mean, it's pretty crazy about this game because, I mean, when I heard about it at E3 from the Nintendo press conference, the Nintendo Direct, I should say, it was actually a bit of a surprise. I wasn't expecting, you know, not only getting the show and all these other material that's going to come out with the books and comics, but also a video game alongside it. So it's been a pretty awesome year for Dark Crystal fans. But yeah, first I'll go to each of you and just introduce yourselves and who you are and what your role is with the making of the game.
Yeah, my name is Dave Pottinger. I'm the president of Bonus XP. And as far as Dark Crystal Tactics goes, I'm the game director. So I'm in charge of making sure that the vision is something that we're executing inside the game and helping make sure the game comes together. A little bit of executive production type of stuff in there too.
I'm Alex Swaim. I'm the lead designer. And a lot of what my role is I, go, what do we want the gameplay to be? How do we go and tell the story and work with the rest of the design team to go answer those questions and put the game together.
Before we get into the game, I mean, I would actually like to ask both of you, how did you discover the Dark Crystal? Was it something that it's always been a part of you, growing up, with the film or, DVD or VHS, that sort of thing? Or has it been something that's sort of been more of a recent for both of you?
Well, tending to be on the older side of our studio, I actually saw it in the theaters when it came out. So it's always been there for me. I think it's something that, at that point in my life was just formative in terms of fantasy. And it's been something that, I spent the better part of the last 40 years thinking about. And it's been kind of a bucket list item to be able to go do something in that universe. And, you think about things that are just, part of the culture that our generation grew up with. And at least for the geekier game side folks, this is definitely one of those. And it's been very exciting to be able to work on that.
So my experience with the Dark Crystal, I actually did not see the Dark Crystal growing up as a kid. I watched a ton of other Henson properties, and I love them all. Watched The Muppet Show on pretty much loop whenever it was on television. But when I went off to college, I had a roommate who was a huge movie buff and just, kept bringing up like, oh, hey, have you seen this movie? No? Well, okay, now we know what we're doing tonight. We're going to go, like, I've got my billion DVD collection. I'm going to go pull it out. Or I think we had a VHS player at some point because there were some things that he didn't have on DVD, so we went and found a VHS player. And one of those nights was the Dark Crystal. He was just like, oh, yeah, I know the Dark Crystal. And one of my other roommates said, oh, I've never seen that. And I was like, well, I've actually never seen it either. And he was like, cool, that's what we're doing tonight. We're watching the Dark Crystal. And it just kind of, it like immediately captured me. It immediately made me go, like, this is everything I love about Henson growing up. But in such this vibrant, alive world as well. And it's telling this great story. So I was just like immediately captivated. So when I heard that, we could do something on the Dark Crystal, I was very excited.
Yeah, I mean, that must have been kind of like a surreal thing. I mean, especially with the movie, just how visual and just amazing that the film is. But yeah, I mean, back a couple of years ago when Netflix and Henson Company, when they announced that they were going to make a prequel 10 episode, 10 hours of Dark Crystal, that was going to come out, a couple of years time, from 2017, and now here we are in 2019 with the show and so much content with everything from the show and everything else. And so I guess, I mean, that was the thing, like how did you get involved with, I guess the origins start with the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance. How did that happen? Was it something that you approached them or they approached you? Or I would love to know sort of the story behind that.
Yeah, so we got involved with the Dark Crystal through Netflix. We had done a game with them, the first Stranger Things mobile game, and had actually started working with them on the second Stranger Things game that we made that just came out this year. So we had a good working relationship with them. The game industry, much like Hollywood, is TV and film is very much based off of who you know, and so a connection that we had from the old days working on Age of Empires, and I think we were happy with the first Stranger Things game, and Netflix was too. So we talked about doing some other things together, and we had known that they were working on Dark Crystal, and they asked us what we were interested in working on that they were doing, and of course that was near the top of the list, if not at the top of the list, for a lot of folks in our studio. It's for bonus, we do original properties and we do licensed stuff, but we never really set out to make licensed games, and so our bar is pretty high for the things that we want to work on. It's got to be something that's just as exciting for our team as something that we're creating on our own, and it's really pretty easy to tell when the team is excited about something. When we talked, I came back from LA and said, hey, we talked about pitching them a Dark Crystal game. And the artists, I think, almost every single one of them just leapt out of their chairs. The excitement was palpable, and it was an easy choice because just so many people in our studio have grown up with Dark Crystal or fallen in love with it later, like Alex, and it's such a touchstone and kind of a seminal fantasy property that I think for a lot of our team, it defines a lot of what fantasy is, and the chance to have any kind of involvement in that is a great thing. So, we worked with Netflix, and of course we worked with Henson too, which has been an honor to kind of dip our toes into the universe, and giving them getting feedback from them and integrating it into the game, make sure that the game is as authentic as possible. But of course it's a game too, so we have to change a few things here and there to make sure that it's a fun game. And they've been great partners, both of them, helping us find the right way to tweak things and change things around so that it's a compelling game first and foremost, and a great Dark Crystal franchise piece as well.
So does that include I'm just thinking of names, for example, but for example, like with Jeff Addis and Will Matthews, who sort of created the show or developed the show, are they sort of the essential or one of the many pieces towards the video game, whether it's with stories or, to implement with the video game, or is sort of the story sort of been that you've sort of had the creative freedom, a bit of, creative license to tell sort of stories, within the game for tactics?
To be honest, it's in terms of who we've worked with, it's been a lot of people. The very first meeting that we had at Henson, Lisa Henson walked into the room, and we were debating the way the characters looked within minutes of her entering the room. That was pretty exciting. And everybody that we worked with at Henson on the game, and Netflix too, they've been great and very supportive. The game is something that is an expansion of what's going on with Age of Resistance. It's not. We don't want to make a game that just retells the events of the show. So it's the events of the show are intermingled and intertwined with the gameplay that's in the tactics game. But there's a great deal of content that we've expanded on and added so that it should be something that even if you've seen the show, as we expect most people who play the game will have seen it from a Dark Crystal fan standpoint, anyway. It's something where you'll see nods to the season throughout the game. You'll play through some of the iconic moments, but there's a lot of new things there that you won't have seen before, and that's important from kind of a lore standpoint and kind of fan service, making sure that there's something for everybody. But it's also important that we tell a cohesive story to people who aren't Dark Crystal fans. This is a kind of chocolate peanut butter project where we were taking two things and sticking them together. And the perfect world, we've got Dark Crystal fans that have played tactics games. That will be the best thing. But we know a bunch of them won't, and so we're going to be introducing tactics to them for the first time. And of course, it's got to just be a great tactical game, right? We've got a long history going back to Age of Empires with a lot of our people, and our chief designer, Bruce Shelley, worked on Civilization with Sid Meier and Railroad Tycoon. And so we have a big, long, deep strategy heritage, and there'll be people that are playing the game because it's a great strategy game and are just getting introduced to the Dark Crystal. So we've got sort of three different groups of people that we're working on the game for, and each of them has some different needs and different expectations of the game. But at the end of the day, nothing matters if the game isn't great. So that's got to kind of rule everything. But it's been good working with the people from Henson. Just as we've sort of been in this podcast, I've gotten multiple emails about interfacing with them and getting concept approval and feedback. So that's something that we do spend a lot of time to try to make sure everything is as accurate and in the lore as possible.
I mean, that's something that fans will, I guess myself, will also be looking forward to. I mean, not only getting moments, scenes or levels that are based from the show, but also sort of stories that are sort of about, well, this was all happening in Age of Resistance. There was this other story that sort of happened off screen. And I know in the past we sort of had that, for example, with J.M. Lee's books, with the young adult novels, that we sort of got a bit of that side story. It seems, that'll certainly be the case as well with Tactics. So, which is really exciting. When the game was sort of in development and, thinking about genres that, they went through, they could go through, different kinds of genres for the game. What made you set out to make this as a tactical turn-based game?
So in our mind, when we started thinking about, what do we want, they want us to pitch Dark Crystal, what game do we want to make in that universe? We quickly came up with the idea of, well, what if we did a tactical RPG? I mean, so we know that there are characters who are going to be wonderfully iconic. That's just kind of a thing that the franchise has always had, and Age of Resistance has delivered on that. And we want you to care about their struggle. We want you to help watch them grow, and we want you as the player to be able to use your cleverness to shepherd them to success. And those are all great things that fit tactical RPGs. So when we started thinking about it like that, we quickly just went like, hey, tactical RPG sounds like a great fit for the IP. It's going to let us put the characters in maps in the world, and the world is a huge, important part of the feel of the Dark Crystal. And it was pretty easy to decide tactical RPG was a great way to take it.
For myself, like with tactical games, I mean, I had played quite a few games, I think, growing up. I mean, of course, you mentioned Age of Empires. That was always the one I played a lot on PC. And I'm just trying to think of other examples. I think Nintendo's, Advance Wars back on the Game Boy Advance days. And even as recent, I mean, in some regard with the South Park games, like the Stick of Truth, that they sort of had some aspect of, tactical games, with the battle modes where you have to move characters and you do your attacks sort of in that similar field. So, I mean, but yeah, it is something that, I'm, really looking forward to seeing, you guys take on, and I mean, that's the thing, like there hadn't been a modern Dark Crystal video game for a long time. I think since, I mean, it was pretty much when the original film came out, there was only a couple of them. And so it's just really exciting that you guys are sort of having a more modern take, and also based on the show.
It's a good match, I think, really, with the depth, like Alex was talking about in the world. There's just so many good characters, and Certainly with our heritage, we probably think about things from a strategy standpoint quite a bit. And I think, we've made a bunch of games like Age of Empires where you're commanding whole armies, but you don't have a particularly intimate attachment to any one character. And for us, that was just the wrong take on Dark Crystal. But even going back, some of the games you mentioned, but even back a little bit farther to Final Fantasy Tactics, just kind of a seminal turn-based tactics game. It's like just the depth and the attachment that people have to those characters, even playing the game, multiple times over. That's something that when Alex said it clicked, like immediately felt at home for us. That we love making tactics games and strategy stuff, and it was a good kind of union between what we've got a lot of experience with and inherent love for from a gameplay standpoint, along with a property that just screamed to be kind of presented in that light.
I guess one of the questions to sort of have in mind is what's sort of been the most sort of challenging aspect with creating the game for you both? Has it been certain aspects or parts of the game that sort of that were a bit challenging to sort of overcome with making the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance tactics?
So the thing that I immediately think of when I hear that question about what was the trickiest part of making the game so far, it's finding the right balance between action and terror is not the right word, but between
tension,
action and tension, and the just the movie and the show do such a good job of balancing those. And it's how do we translate that into this gameplay? What's the right balance for that, and what makes it feel authentically Dark Crystal? And that's been one of the trickier parts. We're still trying to nail that down as best we can. I think we're in a pretty good spot, though.
Yeah, I think my version of that answer is maybe a little higher level, just given my different role on the project. But it's, I think, living up to what is it, 37 years of expectations, and making sure that we do justice to the property for the fans. We're huge fans ourselves. I think we wouldn't have taken on the project if it wasn't something that we could love. And so it's we think about the game like from a fan standpoint, and we want to put all the stuff in, but then like Alex said, we have to balance shoveling everything in with what makes sense from a gameplay standpoint, and those two things don't always line up. Even though the franchise and the world is a great match for a game like this, that doesn't mean every single piece of it is. A great example is when you're watching the show from the camera angles and stuff like that, you can get a good sense for the different size and scale of the creatures in the universe. And Fizzgigs and Gelflings have a very particular proportion, for example. We've had to alter that proportion because when we made the Fizzgigs the right size, nobody could see them on the TV screen. So, it's hopefully the fans will understand that for a gameplay thing like that, we had to make a change to the way the world is very very well defined. Like there's a lot of specifics, and so we've made I wouldn't say creative license at all, because we've tried to stay very true to the franchise, but we've had to change some things like that in order to make sure that it's a good game. And so I hope that people understand where we're coming from, and love the game and the franchise as much as we do, and realize that things like that change, for example, are done with the right intentions, as opposed to just us not caring about the franchise. We try everything we can to make sure it's all exactly perfect, and some things just translating media from a TV or show or movie where you can have the camera anywhere to a game that does have a particular top-down perspective. Like some things just don't quite work out the same.
I mean, I remember, I think in the Nintendo video, the treehouse, and mentioning about the scale and I totally understand, because I think like you said as well, that if you're doing a Fizzgig, in scale, you just couldn't see the details. So I think that's like definitely important, like, I guess, to have, to show that detail, like with the characters, especially with the small creatures.
We actually started with the fizz gig in the right proportion, and one of the playtesters thought it was a moving pile of leaves. And so the fizz gigs are one, like Alex mentioned, the good balance between seriousness and kind of levity that's in the franchise. Even though some of the overall themes are pretty dark, fizz gigs are important. We need them in the game to bring some of the lightness to it, and they've got some of the favorite abilities in the game and favorite actions are the fizz gig ones, because they're just so cute, and there isn't anybody who doesn't love fizz gigs. So it wasn't a question of taking them out; it was just a question of finding the right way to represent what they are in the show and the movie inside of the game.
And because for me, it's like I love fizz gigs. The creatures they're just amazing, and it was fantastic to sort of see them on the show with Age of Resistance, quite a variety of them. But yeah, for me, it's sort of like I wanted to see more fizz gigs though. So I'm actually looking forward to being able to control a fizz gig as a character throughout the game. So that's going to be pretty exciting for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, we did a demo for Gamescom and PAX West here, and I think the unquestionable star of that demo was a podling character that we had created, and there were people who, if he didn't survive the level, they were dead set on playing the level again, and to make that they had Pombo survive, and so it was. We talk about being true to the franchise and stuff like that, and like it was exciting to see a character that we had added to flesh out the world and give us some of those side stories that you were referencing earlier. To see that fans of the Dark Crystal just immediately gravitated towards that character, and Save Pombo became a kind of rallying cry at PAX, where it was really fun to see people respond. I think we knew that they were going to love the Dark Crystal elements that we had represented from the show, but to see them react really positively to some of the stuff that we had added, I think gave us a good sense that we're on the right track.
Yeah, it's something I'm very much like looking forward to with the game, and just playing as different characters, even as a podling. So that's really kind of cool, because I know podlings, like in the show, it's like, well, it's really just Hup that's sort of taking action. So so now I'm sort of really intrigued about how the podlings sort of get involved in the overall story. So that's really cool. And so I guess you've had demos of the game, of course, at Gamescom and quite and with PAX. And what has the feedback been like from people that have been playing the game overall?
Yeah, I think the feedback from folks who've played the demos was really great. It's one of those things, I think, that people didn't realize they wanted until we announced it, and then it's been incredibly invigorating for the team to see how many people love the Dark Crystal. We know we do, but there's a ton of people that go out of their way to say, I can't believe this is a game, and I'm just so excited to play it. And the fact that it's a tactics game, that's reminiscent of Final Fantasy Tactics, and there just aren't a lot of games like that anymore. There's a couple of good ones every year, essentially, but it's definitely not a particularly heavily trodden genre these days. It's great to see people, as excited to play the game as we are to make it. And I think it's helped us really focus in on what the soul of the game is, to get that feedback. And it's always great to see people who aren't making the game play it. We get a lot of great user experience feedback about interface and whatnot, but just seeing the parts that people gravitate towards, like the podling character I mentioned, and the different abilities we have, and which ones that resonate and which ones don't quite feel like a Dark Crystal thing, and which ones are have bad names, and that feedback, it's great to get that. And the fans were sometimes we had to kick them out of the demo. I felt bad that like they were just excited to play, and I think they are very talkative and engaged. Each and every one of them. So it's been good to interact with them and get that feedback. And it's rare that we had 2 shows back to back with a ton of people, and we don't usually get that much early feedback on the games that we make. So it's kind of unusual to get that much, but very helpful as we are starting to finish up development and figure out where to polish and where to add more here and there. That was really instructive for us to get feedback on which things people liked and which things they thought were missing.
There's going to be about 80 sort of campaign battles that'll be like in this game. And I think there's been mention about there's a lot of different modes that are going to be within this game, like such as I think the new game plus mode. I'd actually like to know what kind of different modes will there be in Tactics?
So we aren't talking too much about what New Game Plus is yet. So the stuff that we are talking about at this point, the core gameplay mode, and different difficulty levels of that. Going back to the discussion about the different types of people that we're thinking are going to play the game. So there's kind of a simpler difficulty level called Story that is just for people who want to play through the game and they don't want as much of a challenge. That's not going to be a particularly great game for a Tactics fan. In fact, we are figuring out how we discourage Tactics fans from playing that mode because it's not meant for them. The normal difficulty and the harder difficulty level, Alex is actually working on some of the AI too, and it's fun to see them pull out different behaviors on the harder difficulty levels that they wouldn't do on some of the easier ones. And like that type of variety in the game is important. And then we'll have New Game Plus, and that'll probably involve some kind of carryover, but we aren't really talking too much about the specifics there yet.
Okay, yeah, no worries. I guess I might as well speak to you, Alex, the lead designer of the game, and I want to know, I guess the challenging aspects, like when it comes to to creating levels or campaigns, map out how each sort of campaign is going to play out. Like how do you make choices between? Because I know, especially in the game, that one of the things in this game that characters can do can actually attack from above, from above, where they got their bow arrows to shoot from above to the other characters. What's sort of been to sort of change up with I guess that sort of has more of a strategy appeal to it. So I'd just love to know just from your point of view about the from the lead designer aspect with Tactics.
Yeah. So when it comes to making sure that the Tactics feels good, one of the big things is that we as a design team, because we have a bunch of great designers and everyone has fantastic ideas, and we work together on these problems. We come up with much better solutions. It's just trying to make sure that we understand this part of the campaign. We want to feel like this, and we want it to feel different than other parts, so that as you go through the campaign, you are faced with a variety of challenges. Because in our opinion, as a team, that's what we think really makes Tactics games shine. When you're put to a new situation where even if all the pieces are the same, the arrangements are different. You were saying earlier where sometimes enemies attack from above. That's fantastic. You put a map where enemies start above you and you have to fight your way up. And then, the next map is one where you start from above and you have to hold the high ground. It creates a great variety of, okay, what do I have to respond to and what the enemy's doing? What does that mean for who I want to bring? What does that mean for how I want to play the map out? And so a lot of how we approach that is, how can we make this work for what the story needs out of it? How can we make this work for what's going to give us the best variety of gameplay?
And I guess, the thing with the Dark Crystal, with the show especially, that there's different types of clans of Gelflings. So, of course, you got the Stone in the Wood, they're sort of in that foresty kind of environments, and the Dowsen are sort of, in the sand environments, and Seafen are sort of by the water. How's that been sort of, if you sort of using like different environments within the game?
We definitely have different environments in the game, and the clan a Gelfling belongs to definitely matters for gameplay. I don't want to give away too much because I'm not sure.
We can talk a little bit about the clan stuff is an important. Obviously now a month ago we couldn't have this conversation, but now the interplay between the clans is a big deal and a big subtext throughout the whole season of Age of Resistance, the first season. So it's something that we have expanded with inside the game, and it's a big deal. There's a lot of gameplay around the clans and what they do. Like Alex was mentioning the different gameplay situations that you can get in tactics games, and we've extended that to some of the clan stuff. So the different territories for the clans will have some different gameplay features on the maps that help kind of pull everything together for that clan. But also when you go to a different territory, the inherent kind of core game plays out a little bit differently based off of the map changes.
So I just want to say thank you so much for being on the show, David and Alex, for being on this chatting about the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance. And I know there's going to be a lot of fans that we're just so excited to get our hands on the game, and just just really expanding the world of the Dark Crystal, playing whether it's Gelflings and Fizz Gigs and Podlings and even Allgrass. So there's certainly a lot to look forward to, and I think as we sort of get to the launch of the game, we'll definitely have a lot to talk about with the video game and so much more. So for any listeners, if you want to know more about the game, you can go to nmas.com/games/Dark Crystal Tactics. And of course, the game is pretty much coming out on every platform from Xbox, PlayStation, the Switch, PC, Mac. It's basically going to be on all platforms, so it's really exciting. So again, just want to say thank you so much for being on the show, David and Alex.
Thank you for having us.
It was a pleasure.
Trial by Stone, the Dark Crystal Podcast, is a production of 3 Point Edit. If you'd like to get in contact with the show, you can do so at darkcrystalpodcast@gmail.com. You can also like us on Facebook, follow on Twitter and Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube. If you'd like to know more about the podcast, visit our website at www.darkcrystalpodcast.com. Thank you so much, and stay tuned for the next episode of Trial by Stone.